Hello, Blue Jays fans. Welcome to episode 251 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by jaysfromthecouch.com. We're coming at you live this Sunday evening, as every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We stream our podcast live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, the audio version can be found anywhere you find a podcast, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, doesn't matter. Look for Jays from the Couch. You'll find it. And if you don't, you're using the wrong podcast company. And don't forget, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the On Feck Circle with the Feckless Wonder, Steve Feck. Always a unique perspective on the Toronto Blue Jays. So tune in Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Karen Soutar's Sunny Side of the Dome, the only person who blends logic and positivity. It's amazing. You don't want to miss it. That's right, Jays from the Couch. We've got our podcast streaming. We've got 2 shows during the week. We are bringing you more Blue Jays content than Sportsnet is. So make sure you tune in. Hello, I'm your host, as always, Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at JFtC. We've got a great episode for you this week. We're going to look at, we might as well just talk about some broadcasting, watching, listening, and all of that fun stuff. And we'll talk about the recent Jake Odorizzi rumors and how that impacts the Blue Jays and our thoughts on that as well. And of course, we wrap up with our hot takes. So to help me do all of that, it's going to be a great show. Had to call in the best. First of all, Jason MacDonald, Jays from the Couch writer. How are you?
I'm great, Shaun. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for joining me this evening.
Happy to be here.
And the host of Sunny Side of the Dome, Karen Soutar. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Shaun.
So, here we are, broadcasting live to millions and millions of viewers. And it strikes me that, and I said it, in the opening there, but we offer more actual content to watch, more Blue Jays content to watch than the broadcasting network that is owned by the same company as the Toronto Blue Jays. Sportsnet can't even. I don't understand. So we're going to lead off this week. I'm a little annoyed that after it's been a year since we were in this place, spring training. Then we had, the build up for a season, and then we had months of no baseball, and then we had a shortened season and a World Series that nobody really cared about because it was a short season, and now months again of waiting and rumors, and 2021 is going to be an exciting season, and here we are, we're 2021, and we wouldn't know if it's an exciting season. We've got to get Keegan Matheson of MLB.com taking a picture of the stadium and drawing with his finger on his picture to show us the launch angle of somebody's home run. Like, this is 2021. But what is going on? So, Jason, I want to start with you. Sportsnet not carrying spring training games until the end of spring training. And we can't even listen on the radio. What are your thoughts on that? I know, I don't want to insult you here, but you're kind of an old school guy, and I would imagine that baseball on the radio at the very least is something that you've come to appreciate.
Well, I don't go as far back as standing outside Broadway when they used to put the little depot up on with thousands people in front on the road looking at the hand drawn things, whatever they were. But I think I go back to comments that Mark Shapiro made, the Blue Jays president, talking about the Blue Jays market as being a behemoth, going on about how big it is. They could play with the big boys. They're a big market team. Big market teams broadcast their baseball. Big market teams have a radio broadcast done by radio broadcasters. I think it's a big mistake. I think they're going to regret it, especially the radio. I don't think that they understand. They must understand. They're smarter. You would think they're smarter than we are. The depth of the fan base. I grew up I remember the antenna broke on my car, and my friend had to put his finger on the antenna driving down the road so we could get the Blue Jays broadcast. Back when I was 16 or 17 years old. When you see people with earbuds in during a baseball game, a lot of times they're listening to Blue Jays baseball. They might be watching their kid play hockey, but in their ear is supposed to be Mike Wilner. And we're not getting it. So I think they're not being a big market team.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And it doesn't have to be Mike Wilner, obviously.
Right.
It could be anybody because, I've got opinions about that. But Karen, I think Jason brings up a very good point in that, when you're a big market team and you want to act big, why go and do something completely the opposite? And look, for as far as I can tell, it's about money. Maybe they're worried that the season will be canceled again and they don't want to have to commit to all of the broadcasting, but that doesn't fly with me. If you look at the Yankees, Karen, this is my example, right? They own their broadcasting network, and that's how you do it. If you want to saturate the market, to use a business term, if you want to saturate the market, you can actually physically control that on your own, and yet they choose not to.
Yeah, I think Jason makes some good points there that although I hadn't thought of that myself, but I mean, Shapiro did make that comment, and you wrote a very good piece on that as well, Jason, that, they should be doing the opposite of what they are doing in order to maximize that interest and that market. Broadcast these darn games already. I mean, cutting out the radio and simulcasting it. That's when they have the TV broadcasts. I've seen so many people comment that like a TV broadcast of a sports event and a radio broadcast of a sports event are by nature two very different things, that with the TV, it's expected that people are watching. So they're just, the play-by-play is augmenting that, whereas people listening on the radio, they're not watching, and the radio people are meant to be they're meant to be the eyes for people who are listening on the radio, and it has to be just that much more descriptive. And I don't know how that's going to work even when they get to that point. But yeah, I mean, spring training baseball is here. There are games on. And I mean, I've been following along on MLB at Bat game day, because that's other than following Twitter and seeing the updates by Keegan and by Mike Wilner, who writes for the Star now. Like those are the only options. So it's lacking in something. I mean, good news, bad news. The good news is the next TV broadcast is within a week. They've got 2 broadcasts coming up. Unfortunately for people like me, and I think maybe the 2 of you, it's on a Friday and a Monday. So what the heck happened to Saturday and Sunday? As I'll be at work. I don't know about anybody else, but...
I don't know, man. Maybe they are just getting so much viewership from poker and darts that they can't bump it. And like, think about it. Even if this was the plan, let's say near the end of the season, right? Like, okay, that's your plan. You have the off season that you have, and you just. I don't understand how you're not pumping and pumping and pumping your product, because your product is hot right now. And in fact, the only thing that's making it not that way is the fact that they're not broadcasting it and they're not pumping it, and they expect that their tweets are enough. And that to me is just ridiculous. Like, think about, even if they said, you know what, we'll broadcast all the spring training games, and even they can do the simulcast, right? Because that's, at least it's something. We'll do that exclusively on Sportsnet, right? So, like, for example, myself, I don't have cable. We don't have television. We just use the internet. So I would actually pay the whatever monthly fee for the Sportsnet app so that I could watch these games. But I'm literally saying, take my money. Like, here's my wallet, let's go. And there's nothing for me to spend it on. And that's a shame. Go ahead, Karen.
Speaking of Twitter, reminds me the other night when the Jays were playing the Yankees, and it was a weekday evening game, perfect opportunity, but no broadcast, like not even on the Yankee side, nothing. And it was that game when Woods Richardson had 2 scoreless innings, and then Alek Manoah followed that by 2 scoreless innings. And Blue Jays Twitter, I don't even know if they were thinking about what they were doing, but after that they sent out a tweet, keep an eye on these 2, and had both of their Twitter handles. Well, I quote tweeted that and said, if only we could.
Right.
I got a few reactions for that too. Like,
Karen, you mentioned that you watched on what's the app? The
MLB at bat.
The play-by-play. Well, do you know what I did? I watched the Atlanta Braves play.
Oh.
And if you are a multi-million-dollar corporation, the last thing you want is your viewer or your customer looking at something else, right? Toyota, I drive a Toyota. They don't want me to go sit in a Ford because I might just decide I like that Ford.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They gave Francisco Liriano $1.5 million to maybe make the team. How much could it cost to broadcast a baseball game when Buck Martinez is already in the studio in the stadium?
Yeah.
I can watch my son play Major Bantam on my computer. I'm not, because of COVID, we're not allowed in it. It's broadcast on the internet.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect. We don't need 7 camera angles. Just give us 1 or 2.
Uh-huh.
Yep. I've been waiting forever for Blue Jays baseball, and I know a lot of, like, it just seems completely ridiculous to me. And just, I don't get the thought process behind it, and no amount of commenting from the club presidents or anybody else is seeming to make this any easier or more clear for me. So they made a mistake. They messed up bad. I don't know what it's going to be like, when the season starts. And here's a comment from Lars Nelson, who's watching on Facebook. Lars says, I love the podcast. Thank you, sir. But the industry trend is leading to simulcasts. It is a more efficient way to maximize ad revenues and content quality. I'm a Canadian living in Buffalo, but would much rather have Dan Shulman anchoring Jay's broadcast. The days of Cheek and Howarth are gone. Lars, I do not disagree that there's progress happening here. If you want to, for lack of a better term, things are moving forward. It's 2021. But the fact that it is 2021 means there's no excuse for me to not be able to watch spring training games at all, any form. And Dan Shulman, pro's pro, one of the best ever. And so I'm sure he can handle radio, or the description that radio requires. I'm not worried about that, but give us something. And that's my issue, is you can't. It's a big mistake. Anyway, final thoughts on that topic because right now I just feel like I'm rambling because I'm so angry. So Jason, I'll check in with you. Final thoughts on the broadcasting mess?
I don't have anything more to add. They made a mistake. They have a market of 35 million people, and they're ignoring it right now.
Yep. Karen?
Well, good news. There's 9 more TV broadcasts coming up, and the next one is Friday. So at least there's something in the future between now and April 1st. So
see, this is why all of those people who are watching this show right now need to also tune in Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time when Karen does Sunny Side of the Dome, because she's not happy. You may not be able to tell by looking at her, but she's not happy that she can't watch her Blue Jays, and yet she still manages to find a silver lining there, and the positivity shines through. So absolutely, you got to check out that show on Thursdays for more like that. All right. Next thing we want to talk about, there was a rumor. It didn't last very long, thankfully. That's the one thing about rumors that come out at the beginning of March. It's that you don't have to hear them forever and ever and ever, right? So it was, if you blinked, you missed it. But Jake Odorizzi, the Blue Jays said to have been interested in him, in his services. And eventually he signed with Houston. So why is my question. And Jason, I'll start with you. Why Jake Odorizzi? Is it just that he's a name and that could, stretch out the rotation and whatnot, or is there actual more value there that I'm missing?
I think it's mostly name. I think that a lot of media and a lot of fans, they see a name and they say, go get the name, any name, throw $15 million at him. Jake Odorizzi's a good pitcher. He has been slightly above average for his entire career until last year. He's been healthy. But 15 million this year, 15 million next year, plus an option, I think a player option, or at least an opt-out. It doesn't make any sense. Not for this Blue Jays team. Robbie Ray, Steven Matz, Tanner Roark, Stripling, they're all almost identical pitchers. They're all slightly above average major league careers. They have 4 of those type of pitchers right now. Plus they have, we all could name 5 minor leaguers who pitched in the majors last year, and they're going to be playing AAA. They're going to be ready to come up. That's 10 major league pitchers, starting pitchers we have. We don't need another one. What we do need is someone to start game 2 of a playoff series. Jake Odorizzi's not that person. So I'd rather wait and get the number 2 starter in a playoff series. And I'm glad Odorizzi's not here.
All right, fair enough. Karen, is Jake Odorizzi the guy that would have made this offseason a success? Because there's still the small group led by the Feckless Wonder. Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on the OnFX Circle, who will tell you that the offseason was not a success because they didn't address their rotation. So, Karen, my question to you is Jake Odorizzi the answer to that whole issue that some folks seem to have?
For me, no, he wasn't. And I looked, he was, as we're saying, he's a late into the offseason signing, and he was still out there, and people talked about him along with Taijuan Walker and James Paxton, who were all late signings for the teams that they ended up with. And I looked at their stats, and there was nothing about Odorizzi that really jumped out at me. And I think Jason's got a point that, when I would talk about it or write about it, I would say, the Jays could really benefit from a veteran, established, quality starting pitcher. Jake Odorizzi is an established veteran, but what he's established to me is nothing spectacular. And he wasn't someone that I wanted in the Jays. Honestly, for that trio, as much as I really thought Taijuan Walker was great in the 6 games that he pitched for the Blue Jays, if I'm looking back at their careers, and, we know that James Paxton was injured in 2020, and we don't know to what extent he's healthy and pre-2020 Paxton, but his pre-2020 career, to me, was something pretty impressive. It was consistent. It was very, very good. And if there was the opportunity to get pre-2020 James Paxton, I think that could have been very good. Now, that said, there's always the possibility, knock on wood, that Paxton will be very good. And if the Mariners don't look like they're in a playoff hunt, there's always the trade deadline.
True. And I think really when it comes down to it, I agree with both of you. I wouldn't have minded Jake Odorizzi for a year. I wouldn't, even if they had to pay $15 million for it, it wouldn't have bothered me, because you need pitching, right? And experienced pitching, it's going to cost. But he's not, as Jason said, he's not somebody you start game 2 of a playoff series. And really, that's where the Blue Jays should be looking right now. Not that they're in a playoff series and they won't be for a long time, and it's not even guaranteed. But that's the mentality. That's where they should be looking. And I think that's going to, if it comes, it'll be coming via the trade deadline. And even then, the cost of a number 2 starter at the trade deadline may very well prove to be too much for this front office. How much they love their prospects, right? And so maybe for that reason, I know Odorizzi might be okay. You know what I mean? He might be helpful, but again, you got to aim higher, I think, at this point. We got some reader comments popping in here. Keith Duncan, hey, I made it to a live show. Awesome. Thanks, Keith, for tuning in. Glad you could make it. Not too many live shows going on with COVID and all that stuff, but thanks for making the time for us here. We couldn't keep him quiet. The Feckless Wonder. Steve Heck, hot take. Jake Odorizzi will be top 5 Cy Young finalist playing in Houston as he could have been in Toronto.
No.
You know what, Steve? I'm just going to say this right now. If that's true, if that is true, I will come on the On Feck Circle and apologize profusely to you and your legions of fans, because that would be something. But I'll tell you right now, I don't see it, but I am willing to apologize live on your show. Jim Scott's tuning in here. Remember how much David Price cost for a half season rental? Yes, I do. Karen.
David Price was like top 2 in Cy Young voting that year, and rightfully so. And right. The cost going back to the Detroit Tigers have done what exactly in their MLB careers to this date?
Right.
At best, one guy, man. The other two, nothing.
Yep. And so there you go. Right. There's the David Price was absolutely the right target for the right time at the right cost. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen again. So do you really see this front office addressing this starting pitching question at the trade deadline? And Jason, I'll throw it to you first. Like, is this something that you could actually see happening?
Yes, I can, because they did it last year, right? They added Walker, they added Ray, and they added a bit more as well. And I think if they're within, they're about 500, they're a couple of games out, that's what you'll see. You'll see, some fringe prospects, maybe a bit better, being traded for guys like that. If they're already in first place, at least this is what I would do, and I think this is what they will do. If you're already in first place, or if you're, a game at a first and 3 games up on the wild card or something like that, you only sell the farm when you're going to win the World Series. This team is not at its apex yet, so you don't have to sell the farm. If you can make it better, great. But there's 10 starting pitchers that we can all list that have major league experience. That Thomas Hatch may very well, maybe that's my hot take, he's going to outpitch Jake Odorizzi. There. It could happen. Would you trade any one of the at least the 4 or 5 minor league guys that the Merriweathers, the Hatches, the Rays? Would you trade them straight up for Jake Odorizzi and is guaranteed $30 million? Not on this team, I wouldn't, because we're still on the way up. I think they'll get the help. Think back a couple of years ago to Yu Darvish. I'm not sure who the Dodgers didn't give up their best prospects for Yu Darvish. They didn't give up their best prospects for Machado. It's a little bit different than it was in 2015 and when it was in 2000 and things like that. The teams don't have to give up as much for a rental player. They have to give up an awful lot for an all-star that they have a few years of control. But I'll leave it at that and pass back.
Yeah, so Karen, before I throw it to you, I'll just put in Jim's question here, and this is kind of what we're talking about, right? Can you see them doing a mega deal where you send a Jordan Groshans or an Austin Martin or Simeon Woods Richardson, excuse me, for a near ace like Castillo or Marquez?
I mean, we had so many of these conversations in the chat room in the off season, even before spring training got started. And as much as we hypothesized, I think I'm with Jason. I can see them making trades. I don't see them trading away their top prospects, not yet. Because as I said, I think they're a playoff team, and I think they can take a step forward beyond what they did in 2020, but I would not bet a lot of money on them winning the World Series in 2021. So there's not a lot of points. emptying the cupboards. Now, mind you, those two pitchers come with a lot of years of team control too. So there's that. It's not like they're guys that you're going to lose the next year, but I don't know. I can see them, like I say, even someone like James Paxton, assuming that he bounces back. I'm circling back to him, or I'm sure there's at least one or two other guys out there who only have less than a year of team control left, and if they pitch like a solid number two, who you could have starting game number two of the playoffs, I can see them trading a little bit more in prospects than they did in 2020, but not your top guys. Not yet.
So, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Karen. I apologize.
No.
So, the next question I have for you is actually, I was like, okay, as soon as they're done, I've got this question for them because it follows naturally. And then Keith basically threw in a comment here that hits up that question. This may not be the year they're supposed to go all the way, but I believe they expect to go deep into the playoffs, and this rotation will not take them there. That's Keith watching on YouTube again. Keith, glad you can make it. Thanks for the input there. So that's my next question is, Jason, as things are right now, is this good enough for a deep playoff run, or are we looking at maybe the same result as last year with maybe an extra playoff win or two?
I think they have to add. I don't think it's enough. With the caveat that they have arms there, that if they're healthy, and they've had years, Robbie Ray, Steven Matz have had years where they could be a number two in a playoff rotation. It's been a couple of years, but it can happen. And then we all have to think about Nate Pearson. The guy only has 19, in a third innings pitched or something like that. It's a lot to ask. But if he pulls it together and he stays healthy and he still has some innings left at the end of the season, he could definitely start a game two.
Right. Karen, over to you.
Right. Well, on paper, they don't look like they're going to be a playoff rotation that can help the team go deep into the postseason. But again, I mean, I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm reminded of going into 2016 that everybody thought, oh yeah, the bats are going to be what carry them. Is this rotation really going to be enough? I mean, you had both Stroman and Sanchez, young guys who both had a lot of upside, that they both had injuries the previous year in 2015. Stroman's was quite significant. Sanchez spent part of the year on what they called the disabled list at the time. And then there was a Marco Estrada that was just kind of came out of nowhere, and he was phenomenal. Well, could he continue it the next year? And Jay Happ, who they signed as a free agent, who basically had one half good season the previous year. I mean, it's not even Trevor Bauer that had a whole good season that was 2 months. But in 2015, we had a regular 162 games, and Happ was quite average for the first half, and then he got traded and all of a sudden caught fire. So, I mean, that was your rotation, plus R.A. the knuckleballer, and if anything, the rotation ended up being the strength. And maybe I'm crazy to think that parallel could be there. I mean, Pearson, as you said, unfortunately, he's had some injury problems and he's got one now. But if he can stay healthy, he's got the stuff to dominate major league hitters. So, I mean, it is entirely possible, though I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but it's possible that our number two is already with us.
Okay. Well, then now I'm going to put you both on the spot. I'm sure that you have already prepared your hot take. But since we're getting close to the end of episode 151 here, maybe I'll just ask you your hot take, Jason, who is this year's breakout pitcher that they're going to need? Because if they're going to rely on this rotation as it stands right now, they're going to need somebody to surprise, right? And I know how you feel about Robbie Ray. your hot take from a few weeks ago, made that very clear. So I'm going to kind of put a little rule in place that you can't say Robbie Ray either.
Okay. If I can't say Robbie Ray, because I do, okay, I'll leave that, actually. You told me to leave that. Julian Merriweather. I love him. I think he's 29 years old. He has the blazing fastball and the Bugs Bunny changeup. He's going to be our breakout pitcher. It might not be right out of the gate, but he's going to help us down the stretch.
Okay. All right, Karen, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many candidates. I think the talent on this team is a little bit underrated. It could easily be Nate Pearson. He's kind of the obvious answer. But for a 1A, someone that doesn't get a lot of attention, Ross Stripling. When you look at his career pre-2020, I mean, all you see is consistency year after year after year. His ERA and his FIP were like always in the threes. I like that. And I mean, he only became expendable last year because for some reason he went through a blip, and the LA Dodgers, who were on their way to winning a World Series, had no room for that on their roster. So,
yeah, the Blue Jays will take your blips. They don't mind.
Yeah, so he could bounce back.
Okay, all right. And I'm trying to think in my head who I would put my money on to break out. And maybe Tyler Chatwood. He's somebody who I think may find himself in limbo right now, but once they find a role for him, obviously if it's in the back end of the rotation, then that's that eliminates him from this conversation. But if not, and the other thing too is that if Ryu gets hurt and Pearson's groin is a longer issue, or there's another issue or whatever have you, then the rotation looks pretty bad, right? And Tyler Chatwood very well could find himself in the mix. I like Jason's idea of Thomas Hatch as well. I think that's a solid pick for a breakout starter as well. But really what this does is it points out just how, for lack of a better word, mediocre the rotation could be. And I know you guys are high on the rotation and you're excited about the rotation, but it wouldn't take much for it to be a really poor group of starters. Or am I crazy?
Well, I think the same thing could be said for any Major League Baseball team. If Cole went down with the season-ending injury for the Yankees, what does their rotation look like? I mean, probably except the Dodgers, you take the number one out of any rotation, and it doesn't look near as good. So, and besides that, I really like, Anthony Kay. Is he gonna pitch 1,000 innings in the next 6-7 years of under 4 ERA? Probably not. But used appropriately, he could really help this team this year. And there's more. There's Thornton. Was it Bob Ritchie today that we were texting with or whatever, and he was talking about Thornton is the impingement or whatever it was in his shoulder is better, or was it bone chips? I can't remember. He's finally, this is what it feels like to throw healthy, and he's extending his arm and he's much more effective. So here's another guy.
Fair enough, Karen.
Yeah, that was a good comment there on the screen about Anthony Kay. Yeah, his first start he topped out at 97. I don't think you're crazy. I think the rotation certainly has the potential to be not all that good, but that's kind of like a worst case. For me, I see a wide range of outcomes for this rotation. But again, there's so many options between the veterans and the young guys, the veteran bounce back candidates and the young guys. That's like all it takes. They don't all have to be healthy and really, really good. And if they were, that would be an absolutely phenomenal problem for them to have. But all that doesn't have to happen. All they need are maybe 2 or 3, knock on wood, if Ryu can stay healthy and be Ryu, then all we need are maybe 2 or 3 out of that 10. And you could, on paper, have a very good rotation. We'll have to see how it plays out, but yeah. Wide range of outcomes, I think.
Okay. And Lars Nelson again on Facebook, given how many pitchers or how pitchers will be used, do the Jays really need a breakout pitcher or benefit from the aggregates, right? And that's a very I guess fair comment. And Jim, one last comment here. Jim asks, could the Jays excel with the bat enough to offset an average rotation? The difference between a number 3 starter and a number 2 is only 1 run per game. So is it possible that the offense can carry? It seems to me that they're banking on it, right? So it better, because anyway, but in fairness, Karen is right that a wide range of outcomes are possible. So I'll leave it there. And it just in time for our hot takes segment. Jason, you were up first. You do have your hot take for episode 251.
I do. I don't know how bold it is. I like to be bold, but I'll go with this one anyway. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. will be an all-star this year.
Yeah, baby.
He's going to break out.
Okay. Now, Jason has a post coming out tomorrow. We're recording on Sunday evening, so on Monday, about the 4 outfielders, and you do an interesting comparison between Gurriel and Teoscar. Do you want to tease that a little bit? Because I think it helps with your hot take.
Sure. If you go to baseballreference.com and look at the 162 game average of Gurriel Jr. and Teoscar Hernandez, I don't have it in front of me, but I think Gurriel has them by about 50 points in batting average, about 20 points in on-base percentage, and they are both tied with 33 home runs for 162 games. So everybody's talking about Teoscar, and I understand why. He had an awesome year last year. Very few people are talking about Gurriel Jr. And if I had to trade one, if somebody said you can have Clayton Kershaw, but you have to give up one or the other and it's your choice, I'd keep Gurriel Jr.
Okay, that's a bold statement. See, it didn't start out that way, but it actually got more and more bold as you went along, because most people would do it the opposite, right? Teoscar surprised a lot of people, but Lord Gurriel, since he's come up, has kind of been progressing quietly. And I think the numbers that you just quoted are actually a little surprising. I was surprised to see them in your article when I was getting it ready, and I saw Karen's face when she was hearing them. So
I was surprised too when I saw them.
Wow, yeah.
Right? I mean, I looked at them because I had an inkling, but he's impressive.
Yeah. All right, Karen, your hot take.
Yes. So, tiny bit of a departure from my usual try to stay on the optimistic side, paying attention to spring training results and sort of who's hot and who's not. Tanner Roark, he had his first start yesterday. He actually pitched 2 scoreless innings, but from what I hear from those who were actually able to watch, he got a lot of help from the defense. There's also a comment that his velocity was down maybe a couple of miles an hour, and that was from last year when it was down from what he's done in the past. And what he did last year, even though it was only 2 months, I mean, what was that, a 6.80 ERA? I'm sorry to those who still believe in him as a bounce back candidate, but I mean, if his velocity is that much on the way down, I don't see him being that long for the team. One way or another, Tanner Roark is not going to finish 2021 in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform. I don't know if they can even find a trade candidate for him. I think it might end up as a DFA, and they eat what's left in his contract. So, sorry.
Wow, you're going to set Steve off.
Sorry, Steve.
He's going to lose his mind. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if you were right. Like Tanner Roark was not supposed to be an integral part of any playoff rotation or anything like that. He was supposed to be a guy to get them to the younger guys like Alec Manoah and so on and so on. So anything that I guess Tanner Roark does in the positive, I think is just a bonus, which unfortunately hasn't been much. So my turn. Hot take. It's not bold, but I will share it anyway. I was on the Beat the Heat podcast, and he was asking me, Christian Rao was asking me for throw him something near the end of the show, something to watch for, and so I offered up a little hot take, and I'm going to bring it here now. But Bo Bichette will be a MVP finalist in 2021. I gotta say, there's something about Bo Bichette that I just cannot get enough of. Everything about this young man, and then I was reading today. Jonathan Davis actually made comments, on Bo Bichette and how he's matured and developed into a leader and all of that stuff. And I think if that's the case, then you may see the results of that on the field as well. So I'm looking forward to it because he is not even close to reaching his potential yet. So anyway, there it is. Not crazy, not bold, but there it is. I want to take the time to thank everybody. We had a lot of comments and questions running through here on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube coming into our show. So thank you all for tuning in, sending your questions and all of that. Really appreciate it. It makes the show better. So thank you for tuning in and for contributing as well. All right. So Jason, let everybody know how they can follow you and all that fun stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter at J MacDonald Jason. That's JMacDonald JASON.
Easy peasy. Karen, you're up.
Yes, I too am on Twitter at Karen Soutar1. That's SOUTAR1. And I'm on Twitter a lot. I'm kind of addicted. So if you want to talk baseball or anything else within mutually respectful boundaries, you can find me pretty easily.
And Karen hosts Sunny Side of the Dome every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Like I said, the best blend of logic and positivity you will find anywhere. And let's be real, you're not watching any Blue Jays baseball anywhere, so no excuse but to tune in. I had to say it. I mean, come on. Anyway, that brings us to the end of episode 251. 251 episodes. When I first started this, I had no idea that it would go like this, but it has, and it's been awesome. Thank you for tuning in for another week. Head to jaysfromthecouch.com. Jason's got a new piece coming out tomorrow. All kinds of Blue Jays content there for you. Streaming live every Sunday, this podcast, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, every Sunday. More content than Sportsnet. And the On Fact Circle, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Lots and lots of Blue Jay stuff for you. Thank you for tuning in for another week of baseball. For Jason, for Karen, and for the feckless wonder, Steve, this is Shaun Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at DoyleJFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle, and you don't miss it. Take care.